Arthur Johnson, speaking of boxing, the St. Louis metro area has produced a number of great prize fighters over the years. I'm sure you're familiar with the Spinks brothers, Leon and Michael, Archie Moore, Henry Armstrong, Sonny Liston, Virgil Akins, and the man we're honoring tonight, Arthur Flash Johnson. He's a native of East St. Louis and has orchestrated a stunning career in and out of the ring. As an amateur, he won 12 national championships and an astonishing 170 fights as an amateur. 170 fights. He competed for the United States in the '88 Olympic Games in Seoul. He was the first American boxer to win a gold medal at the Goodwill Games. He retired in his early 20s, but mounted a comeback as a pro and won 3 world championship belts. When I was working at KMOX, I would call Arthur to analyze some of the big upcoming fights, and his analysis was always right on, and he was good friends with a guy named Muhammad Ali. After retiring with his wife, together they founded the Arthur Johnson Foundation to help youngsters stay in school, stay off of drugs, and pursue their education. He has produced a documentary on his career called Greatest Comeback. He's multi-talented. He's been composing and performing gospel music for many years. And perhaps the most commendable, Arthur Johnson has never forgotten his roots and where he came from as he tries to improve East St. Louis. So we are honored tonight to induct Arthur Flash Johnson into the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame. Jim Holder will be doing the interview.
We're not going to argue over who's going to run the microphone here because Flash might be pretty tough to handle. Well, first of all, congratulations, Arthur.
Thank you.
Arthur Flash Johnson.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, you got to find out, you know, because Flash is part of everything. When they hear Arthur Johnson, it's Arthur Flash Johnson. Mm-hmm. So, where did Flash come from?
Well, it's a little story that goes back to the Goodwill Games, and there's a gentleman by the name of Paul Horney, a Hall of Fame football player who played for the Green Bay Packers. He was calling the Goodwill Games, and one of the things he thought that was unique about me is that when I would throw combination punches, I would throw 8, 9, 10 punches in one combinations. And so he would say, and here he is, Arthur Flashy Johnson. He's got flashy hands, folks. He's got flashy hands. So.
Well, if you ever have the opportunity, Google Arthur Flash Johnson, and they'll bring up a couple little clips. You can't see his hands move. They are so fast. So I understand that. East St. Louis. A lot of people have a lot of different ideas about East St. Louis. Sure. You know, good, bad. When I think about East St. Louis, so Arthur or Flash, I think about all the athletes that have come out of East St. Louis. Like last night, Missouri's playing down in Alabama. The head coach of the Missouri Tigers, Conzo Martin, East St. Louis Lincoln. And doing the color on the broadcast was LaFonso Ellis, East St. Louis Lincoln. So it was really kind of interesting that the two are there. But you can think of all the football players and the basketball players, baseball players. But, you know, boxing is like you didn't necessarily see or hear about the young athletes coming out of East St. Louis, maybe that were boxers. So how did that start?
Well, the boxing career started, I really do believe that I was really kind of born to do this thing. My earliest, funniest memory of boxing was watching it on television. And I would dream after, you know, seeing it on television, watching the Muhammad Ali's, things of that nature, I would dream of becoming a boxer at some point. So much to the fact that I would put like a little aluminum foil in my mouth and imagine that was my mouthpiece and I would be competing as a boxer.
Sure.
And so when the opportunity came for me to join a boxing team. It happened when I lived in the projects of East St. Louis. A couple of young men by the name of James Hooks and Benjamin Stiff started a boxing club. And they wanted to do that to keep the kids out of trouble and to give them something else to aim for, to shoot for outside of what was going on at that particular time, which was gangs and things of that nature. And so I started in that boxing club, and things just went from there. And those guys took a lot of time out with us kids. And the one thing that they would always say is this: I really want you to make it for yourself, not for us, not for me to be known as a great coach, but for you to do something special for you and, of course, your family. And that's really how it all got started.
Yeah, well, we understand it. We're certainly happy. And I know that the city of East St. Louis is, over the years, has been very proud. And you've remained active in that community with your foundation, which we'll hear about in a minute or two. When you look at the fact, the first time maybe that you were in a ring, and you're here, and a lot of these other individuals tonight were involved with team sports. Sure. The two people that I have the opportunity to visit with, Nancy Scranton and of course yourself, are individuals, okay? So you're sitting in the corner, and across over here is somebody else that wants to beat up on Flash. How, from a mental standpoint, how did you prepare yourself for that?
I think psychologically you have to really see yourself, visualize yourself before it happens. Visualize what it is that you want to do. Dream. I was always been a big dreamer. Oh, geez. I mean, I'm just a huge dreamer. I would be around the house shadow boxing, looking in the mirror, and I would be the crowd. I would be the sportscaster. I would be everybody all at one time. And
would you sing your own national anthem too?
Probably.
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, it was just that sort of thing. I visualized it. I saw it happen, and I would call it, and that sort of thing that I teach today.
Yeah. Well, Ron went over the litany of champions and the belts and one thing and another, and congratulations to our guests this evening. The size of that belt,
yes.
Holy smokes. For yourself, what was maybe a high point in your career you could just touch on that you'd like to share with us? Sure. And then how about, I know there was one professional fight where somebody nailed you and knocked
Sure.
you out in the first round.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. I want to take a step back just a minute because you just mentioned about my friend Millette, and I want to say, hey, Millette, we grew up together. We grew up together in this sport way back when we were 12, 13 years old. So we go way, way, way back. Perhaps the most exciting fight for me that brings back fun memories to me was going over to Russia. Fighting in the Goodwill Games, the very first Goodwill Games, which was in Moscow, Russia, 1986. And there was just a load of country who participated in this tournament. And there was one non-Soviet gold medalist. And I'm pleased and I'm thankful to God to say that it was me as I look back on that time, and it was also chosen the outstanding boxer of the tournament. So that was probably my funnest memory, winning the Goodwill Games.
Yeah, and then the loss, that first round knockout was...
Sure. Listen, you brought it up, and we got to talk about it. My wife really hates this conversation even today.
I'm going to be in trouble.
My wife, LaTanya, this is as much honor for her as it is for me. That fight between me and Mark Johnson. Mark Johnson, of course, went on to become known as the first African-American flyweight champion. And if you guys get a chance to look that up, you'll see. But Mark Johnson is a very humble guy. Mark Johnson knocked me out in the first round. This is the first time I talk about knocked down or knocked out. It's one of the first times I had ever been. Certainly, it was the first and only time I was ever knocked out. Mark Johnson caught me with a great shot, and probably because a number of reasons. Shouldn't have really made that weight one too many times. But Mark Johnson brought attention when we became friends over Facebook. He said to me, the very first thing he said to me was, Arthur Johnson, you know, he has gotten over the years the publicity of becoming the first African-American flyweight champion, and for that, I really believe that he was voted into the International Hall of Fame. But the first thing he said to me when we spoke was, Arthur Johnson, you are the first African-American flyweight champion because you actually beat the Thailand fighter, which was 4 years earlier before he and I fought. And so if not for any other reasons, I have huge respect for that guy and being able to catch me with a punch that nobody else in my career ever before or after was able to do that number. So, and again, a great, humble guy.
Yeah, well, special honor for Arthur. Let's give him a hand. Just a couple more items I want to touch on, and that is Arthur is Flash.
Yeah, he's gonna.
Is boxing safe?
Is boxing safe? You know, it is safe for the guy who knows what he's doing, for sure.
Yeah.
It's safe for the guy who adheres to the technical aspects of the game, who learns the game the way that they, you know, here's the thing. With boxing at the highest level, it's one of the safest sports because at the highest level, those guys should be technically sound. You don't really have a lot of accidents. You have your accidents when you have a guy who's overmatched. That's when you have your accident. A guy who's well experienced versus a guy who's being pushed by a manager to fight a guy who's not in the same class as one fighter, as the other fighter. And that's how, you know, and of course, apart from that, maybe less than 0.5% of guys get hurt apart from that. But for the most part, when a guy is overmatched, that's when he gets hurt. That's when it becomes dangerous. And there's if I can say this very quickly, so when most of you folks look at TV and look at boxing, there's a 10-0 and then there's a 10-0. In other words, there's a 10-0 that's totally made up, and then there's a real 10-0. That's the real thing. And that's the difference. That's the difference.
Take a minute and for our audience this evening, they might not be familiar with the Arthur Flash Johnson Foundation. Been around for a long time now, going on almost 18 years. You have a team, you work with young men, there are a lot of different reasons. Take in and just give us kind of the short idea of what the foundation does, and maybe how you might be able to get a few bucks from our folks out here.
Sure. The Arthur Johnson Foundation was established back in 2001 by myself and my beautiful wife, LaTanya Johnson. And we've been doing this for quite some time. We cater to at-risk youth within the metropolitan area. And so we give these kids other options as opposed to the options that they have before meeting us. And one of the things that we do as well is we do there's a mentor aspect that we also do with that, and it's been very beneficial. We've established the Flash Boxing Club, which we do a lot with the kids in terms of taking them out of the state and taking them to different places that they haven't been before, which teaches them, my goodness, a lot of discipline and that. And currently right now, we are renovating our center, which will exist in East St. Louis, Illinois at 1721 State Street. And so we look for great people like yourselves to be sponsors of future events that we do. And we're going to be opening up that center in early spring, which is approaching here very, very soon within the next couple of months, so we'll be opening. And so the address is 1721 is called the Flash Boxing and Activity Center. And so when kids are going there, one of the things that really moves me more importantly than that is the fact that we get a chance to change these lives. The fact that we get a chance to reach out to these young people who are, in most cases, sometimes find themselves in hopeless situations. And so we offer them that hope. Many of them may not box. And even if they do box, it's not a for sure think that they're going to succeed. And so what they do take from us, though, is the discipline that's taught and the lessons of just life in general that they can glean from the experiences that I've had in my life. And so that's primarily what the foundation does. It reaches out to the kids community.
Well, how about a big hand for Arthur Flash Johnson? We can't say congratulations.
Thank you.
The Hall of Fame, naturally, and for that foundation.